Hey everybody, and welcome to this extra special, extra spooky October special edition of Two Gamers with Love. It's more than just one episode. What I'm gonna try to do throughout the month of October on this podcast is to watch every single Halloween film, like the franchise Halloween with Michael Myers, that has ever been released. Going all the way back to 1977, and then all the way up through 2022 with Halloween Kills coming out October 14th. So I'm very excited for this. Halloween is my favorite horror movie franchise of all time. It's kind of a tradition to watch these on Halloween for me each year, and I'm really excited to have a chance to kind of watch these movies and talk about them a little bit as I watch them. And so I think it's going to be a fun adventure during the month of October to revisit all these films, all 13 of them, one at a time, and just kind of chat as we watch. I'm going to do this in real time, so I'm about to push play on the original Halloween film from 1977 starring Jamie Lee Curtis. And if you want to kind of put the movie on and have this podcast on as you watch it, it'll kind of be like audio commentary for the movie. So that was kind of my idea. And, I love these films, for better or for worse. We're going to check them all out. And I think it should be a fun journey. So let's hop into the original, what I consider to be the greatest horror Halloween film of all time, and I'll talk about why as we get through it. Let's jump into John Carpenter's classic, Halloween. All right, so I'm about to cue this up. I'm going to push play right now on the 4K Blu-ray, and I would encourage you to do the same so we can kind of be synced up. I don't recall when I first watched this film, but I've always considered it to be like, a classic, and I love it. And there's so many reasons why I think this movie really just stands alone as just one of the greatest. And so we're just sort of getting through the intro title cards right now. Compass International Pictures presents. And it begins on an all-black screen with just the absolute haunting music of John Carpenter. That sort of synth-wavy, kind of very kind of like eerie staccato music. And we fade in on this jack-o'-lantern, right? Title cards come up all in orange and Halloween colors, Donald Pleasance and John Carpenter's Halloween. And the intro to this film is so simple. It's so simple and yet so effective. That music creates this sort of creeping dread sensation that builds throughout the entire film. And the choice here to do this extremely slow zoom in on the glowing jack-o'-lantern sort of in front of this all black screen as these orange title cards come up for the actors who are in the film is just brilliant, because it's like it creeps up on you. If you're not paying attention, you don't even notice that pumpkin is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And all of a sudden, once you do realize it, it's too late. It's already in your face. It's huge. And that's just that simple cinematic move by John Carpenter is what sets the tone for this entire franchise. This intro is one of the most brilliant, in my opinion, ever of all time. And I absolutely love it. The pumpkin itself is just so simple as well. I love the little, you can tell where the knife cut down on the nose of the pumpkin. Even that choice puts into your mind the image of someone carving a pumpkin with a giant kitchen knife, which of course is the weapon of choice of Michael Myers in the film. And so even here, it's like we don't see a knife. We don't see anything scary. We just see a jack-o'-lantern glowing. But there's so many kind of subconscious images that are brought up for us. And it's just brilliant. Beautiful intro. So here we are in Haddonfield, Illinois, right? Where this franchise takes place. Halloween night, 1963, and we hear children chanting like a Halloween rhyme. Now, the whole first moments of this film are again, a brilliant cinematic choice here to do the opening moments of this film from a first-person perspective. No idea that we're in first-person perspective at first, right? It just looks like it might be the camera panning into this house. And silhouetted in the door frame are these two teenagers, and they're kind of making out a little bit, and they're kissing, and they're kind of moving through the house. And the camera sort of pans around. Oh, there's another jack-o'-lantern, so we're reminded that it's Halloween time. We hear the crickets, and now we're looking through a window, and we're like, oh, this is a little strange. Like, why is the camera sort of doing this voyeuristic kind of move here? And we are sort of observing these teenagers kind of flirting, making out a little bit, and kissing, and one of them has a little mask, a little Halloween clown mask that he's kind of goofing around with. And so once they turn the lights off and kind of make their way upstairs to continue their coitus, the camera continues to kind of roam around the outside of the house, just taking its time. No rush here. The camera is, we see the moon, and then we get this little, as soon as the lights go out upstairs, we get this, sorry, Siri. As soon as the lights go out upstairs, we get this trill, this little musical cue. And then the note at the end of that music just holds for like the rest of the scene. The tension in that one note is amazing, right? That note just goes on and on and on. And then the camera slowly enters into the house. And then all of a sudden the lights turn on in the kitchen and we're like, what? Oh, and then we see a hand reach out and we realize, oh. And that hand grabs a knife. And now we're starting to realize, oh my, who are we right now? What are we seeing exactly? Are we watching a director frame a scene, or are we, it looks like we're in the eyes of a person. And it's so simple. A weird rocking chair in the shadows. The use of light and shadow in this film is absolutely brilliant. The camera moves through the house. We see that sex that the teenagers just had did not last very long. And the boy goes out he leaves. He just goes to do something else while this observer moves through the house. It's just a brilliant scene here. And again, that musical tension is just being built up the entire time. This sort of lingering slowness, this dread, this creeping sensation that we kind of know where this is going. This is not going to end well, right? This is going to be bad for this person, right? And again, the use of shadow and the use of light in this film is amazing. So here we see that mask from earlier, silhouetted sort of on the floor, shining in the moonlight. And now the camera kind of puts the mask is on the camera. It's just amazing. So we're sort of seeing the camera with the mask on it. We have this sort of cutout of these eyes. And so now we see sort of this teenage woman in her bedroom. She's naked, which is kind of like it's a trope of horror films, but she's there getting ready for bed. She's combing her hair, and we're, and then she's murdered by this person that we've been looking at, and she falls to the floor dead, and she screams the name Michael. And the piano starts to kind of hammer out, and we hear this breathing, and it's just like, oh my God, what did we just witness? What is this movie? What's going on here? This is wild. And then as we near the end of the scene, the camera jumps to third person. And I love this moment because it's so odd. It's almost like a stage play. The parents, these adults arrive, and they're not screaming. They're not calling for the police. They're not doing anything. They're just standing still as if frozen in time. As if they're just standing there. And the camera kind of pans out to the sky. And we see this house, and we see these people, and we see this kid with a bloody knife. And it's just this beautiful, creepy moment of stillness. I think that's fascinating. And then we moved to Smith's Grove, Illinois. So a little bit somewhere else. On the night before Halloween, 1978. It's so dark now, you can't hardly even see anything, and it's raining, it's pouring rain. There's a car driving, and then we see Dr. Loomis, Donald Pleasance, sort of one of the main characters here of this film. And he's driving with a nurse, and she's smoking a cigarette, and, you know, they're just sort of enjoying this conversation as they ride to their destination. Again, I love the sort of, to me, the scene goes back to like the opening credits, right? Everything is just black, like everything is dark. You can't really see anything beyond 2 feet in front of your face. It's just amazing. And they're sort of giving us some exposition here about this boy that we just saw, this kid, who's now grown. And this psychologist, this Dr. Loomis, seems very like, he's committed to his stance that this evil is evil incarnate, and that's it. I love the way Donald Pleasance kind of plays this. He's very recalcitrant. He's very determined and annoyed almost that people don't believe him when he's like, this guy is pure evil. You can't mess with him. And then the music comes in, and we just see this bizarrely creepy shot of these white robed figures just sort of meandering in a field in a lightning storm in the dark. And it's just unsettling. It's just a creepy, creepy, creepy image, especially with that Halloween theme music. And, you know, this sort of, you know, Loomis is kind of this like annoying sort of, you know, old man who's kind of crotchety all the time. And then we see the killer here for the first time. Kind of jumps up on top of the car and, you know, reaches in, and, you know, by today's standards, these sort of like scenes of violence are very mundane and very tame. But I think that's what gives this film a particular quality. Like, you don't need the scenes of violence to be gory and bloody and extremely, you know, crazy. Like, they can just be, and here's where he smashes his hand against the car door. I love that, you know, in the more high def versions of this, you can see the little wrench that he's holding in his hand to help kind of crack the window. This was an extremely low budget film. I mean, I think they made this movie for like $30,000, and it made like $1 million in like 1978 or so. It was a huge hit. So they made tons and tons of money. It's one of my favorite lines. I say that all the time when Pleasance is like, he's gone from here. The evil is gone. I say it all the time. So he's freaked out. You know, the nurse survives, but is thrown from the car, which is interesting. You know, she sort of survives, and actually we'll see her again a lot later. And then we cut to Haddonfield, supposedly in the fall. Again, it's a funny story that I've just read about over time, is like, it's not actually fall when they shot this. It's like the middle of summer. And so the trees are all green, and like there's green grass everywhere. And they had to kind of do their best to like make it look like it was fall. So they put leaves around and stuff. But again, that's just one of those kind of endearing qualities of this film, that it's just like, you can just, I don't know. For me, you can just feel its heart, you know? And then here we have Laurie Strode for the first time, Jamie Lee Curtis walking down the sidewalk on her way to school, carrying all her books. So you see the leaves like on the ground here. There's also some geographical discrepancies in this film, which I kind of don't really care about, but it takes her, like, she can walk from her house to Billy Loomis's house to her school. But then like later after school, it takes them like all afternoon to drive back to someone's house. I don't know. It's just kind of funny, but I take all of that with kind of a grain of salt for sure. But again, this is literally like, what are we watching right here? We are watching a woman and a kid walk down the sidewalk, and somehow it's creepy. And I think the music has a lot to do with that for sure. You know, I think John Carpenter's score is absolutely amazing in this. But it's like, it's the slowness of it. It's the way the camera moves. And I really truly believe it's that opening credits and the initial 10 minutes of the film that set all that up. Like the camera is what makes this movie creepy. It's the way the camera moves, and it's the way kind of like that it goes so slowly, and it kind of just, and then we see the Myers house all run down and broken down, and you know, Billy Loomis, of course, is onto it, right? He gets it, right? He says, "Don't go up there. It's a spook house." And Laurie's just like, "Nah, kid." The haunted house. Lonnie Lamb comes back later on in the series as well. And the way that Michael Myers is just sort of like, you know, a stalker in this movie, right? It's really unsettling and it's really creepy. And it makes you wonder kind of like what he's thinking, right? Like why not just if he's really out to murder Laurie, just do it now, right? Like no one's around, just kill her. You know, like, but he doesn't do that, right? He doesn't do that. So it's like, it makes you kind of consider, is there something more, you know, to his psychology perhaps than just being a murderer, right? Loomis is so pissed. He's just like yelling at this incredulous psychologist. I love how Loomis parks in the handicap parking spot too. Like he parks right in the handicap spot. He's kind of an asshole. Loomis is kind of a jerk in this movie, which I think is just an interesting way to do that character. And you know, it makes me wonder how much Donald Pleasance is. So see, I paused for a moment to listen to what the teacher was saying about this Samuel's text and fate and destiny. The shot of Michael Myers across the street, broad daylight, Laurie's just looking out the window. He's just standing there. He's just standing there looking at her. It's unsettling. You can see the weird mask. You can see the face. And you're just like, what the hell? The guy's just across the street. Like, he's just standing there. It's so creepy. And yet it's so simple. And then... So talking about fate as a natural element like earth, air, fire, and water, and this discussion in English class here about fate and destiny, right? And sort of like, are you destined to go on this path, or can you change your fate, you know? And I just like that, you know, it's like an interesting little foreshadowing moment, right? Like, because Laurie's fate is very much tied up with Michael Myers. This scene always pulls, like, I get so sad watching this. I hate this scene where Billy's got this amazing pumpkin. All he wants to do is go have this pumpkin. All he wants to do is celebrate Halloween. And these bullies they just ruin it. They just ruin it for him. He's so sad. The kid's face. I don't know. Maybe some of the bullying that I experienced when I was a kid crops up for me here, but we get candy. They're scaring him, and they're just making him feel bad, and then they trip him, and he ruins his pumpkin. It's so sad. It's so sad. Like, all he wants to do is have his pumpkin carving. And then we get the proper theme. And there he is. The Shape, Michael Myers, this dreadful force that will haunt everyone's lives forever. And he just kind of slowly, I love the framing here, right? We see Billy in the background walking across the schoolyard. We don't see Michael's face. We just sort of see from his shoulders down, and he's just walking along this fence, just kind of stalking his prey. And it's really creepy. You know, he's just out in the broad daylight. He's just out in broad daylight, you know, just like operating, just doing his thing. And it's just, you know, it's just really bizarre, and it's just so creepy, but it's so simple, right? That's what's so brilliant about this film, is that it's got an authenticity to it, a simplicity, I don't know. It doesn't try to be more than what it's trying to be. It's authentic in that way. It's just brilliant, you know? We hear the breathing, and he kind of, you know, this is messed up stuff, right? But he just stops for a second as the kid's like walking down the street, you know, and yeah, different times, right? And then we cut to about 73 miles outside of Haddonfield, and here we have Loomis and his Beamer on a payphone, and he's concerned. He's trying to warn everybody, right? Loomis is always trying to tell everybody that Myers is on his way, and no one ever wants to believe him, right? I also love that we hear this like train sound. Like David Lynch, I'm a big fan of his work, and a lot of times Lynch uses train crossings to indicate like danger and terror and threat. You know, like that's kind of what a train crossing is designed to do. It's designed to sort of warn you of impending danger, right? And so here we have Loomis warning the police chief that danger is coming, and we have a train barreling down the tracks with sirens blaring, you know, to watch out. We see the Phelps garage truck. Loomis discovers the hospital gown. I never quite understood this. Why we get this shot of the rabbit in red matchbook. And Loomis sort of looks at it, and he seems quite alarmed by this discovery. And then, of course, we pan over, and there's the dead, you know, service worker that Myers stole the outfit from. All right. And now we get to high school kids who are actually adults, right? Totally insane. Totally. So it's just a lot of walking around on the sidewalk. So Linda's just like the cheerleader trope, right? Like totally never showed. She's smoking cigarettes and stuff, kind of rebellious. They're talking about boys. They're talking about their relationships. They're talking about... She forgot her chemistry book. And then here comes the shape around the corner in the car. The music kind of fades in. And again, there's like this dreadful feeling, even though we're out in broad daylight. It's just a car going down the street. It's really that music that really does it. And Laurie you can kind of tell like Laurie is, I don't know, she's concerned. Like she just... And they kind of taunt him, and he slams on the brakes for a moment. And they're kind of like, ugh. This actually happened to me once when I was a kid. I was waiting for the bus one morning, and we were just goofing around, I guess, you know, at passing cars. I kind of remember this vaguely, and one of the cars stopped, and the person got out and yelled at us and told us to stop messing around with the cars. So I guess that's a thing that kids do. And they all think it's like one of their friends just like driving past, even though the car says like It says like Haddonfield State Police or something on it. Or it says like psychiatric hospital on the side. It's just great camera work too. I love the camera is in front of them, and then the camera kind of just turns as they walk away and kind of sits there for a minute and watches them kind of walk down the street. I just think that is it's a great move, right? Like the camera is kind of walking in front of them, and then in this, it's quite a while that the camera sits here and watches them go. And again, the camera is a character in this stuff, right? Like the angles, the way that we perceive the film is just as important as what's happening in the film. Here's another great camera shot as it kind of swoops in from the street. You know, the cinematography in this is amazing. The camera work is amazing. I mean, remember, this is like the late 70s, right? So someone just had this camera, attached to them. Maybe a Steadicam, maybe. I'm not sure if that technology even existed then, but like, it must have. But like, oh, and then the camera spins again, and there he is standing in the bushes. It's so eerie. Is it Becky? Is that Laurie's friend's name? Becky? I can't remember, but like, she goes to confront the person, and you can kind of see the light starting to lose the light a little bit here. It's kind of fading. It's getting to be, mid-afternoon a little. And she's kind of joking around about who it actually is behind there, and Laurie kind of rushes over, and there's nobody there. Poor Laurie. I love that line too. Guys think I'm too smart. Like I just like that about Laurie's character. Like she's not a typical damsel in distress. I mean, in a lot of ways she kind of embodies that just because of the tropes of the film and the genre. But like she refuses to kind of become that, right? She's more than that. She's more than just a damsel. Sheriff Brackett. God. Puts his pipe in his mouth, walks away. Jeez. The sheriff. And I love how the street's like all wet now. Like it just rained, in here. It's just funny, because again, like, well, you gotta just let some stuff go, right? Like if it rains, it rains. They gotta shoot the scenes, right? And you can tell Laurie's a little bit freaked out now. She's just like, thinks she's seeing things. She's kind of like, I don't know, her ire is up a little bit. And then she kind of investigates these sounds, and it's just some kids out early trick-or-treating for Halloween because, it's Halloween, and that's cool. And she says to herself, well, kiddo, I thought you outgrew superstition. It's just great. I love this moment too, her bedroom, right? Like it's so peaceful. Like the wind is kind of just coming in through the window is open, and the sort of blinds are kind of blowing in the breeze. It's a very, and the shot of Myers like down in the laundry, just like staring up at her for a moment. It's just great. Where did he go? It kind of makes you wonder, like, is she kind of imagining that? Is he really there? There's some element of that, but like, there's like a Raggedy Ann doll in her bedroom. Her room is very kind of juvenile in a lot of ways. And the sort of phone call with the sounds, right? With the crunching sounds. So she picks it up again, and says hello. And it's Annie. That's right, her name's Annie, right? And Annie's calling. An obscene phone call. So Laurie and Annie have a little phone call about, I'll pick you up at 6:30, which is strange because, I don't know, don't they live right next to each other? And so Laurie kind of lays down for a second and, just kind of relaxes for a moment. And she's telling herself she's ridiculous. Like, she's just seeing things. Like, she just needs to stop. But she's not ridiculous. All right, and then it's a little bit later in the afternoon. We once again see Laurie leaving her house. This time she has a giant pumpkin. Leaves are flying everywhere. It's fall, right? There's leaves falling. She's carrying her big giant bag of stuff. She's got her coat, her blanket, her pumpkin, her bell bottom. She's rocking it, right? And again, just walking down the sidewalk, and here's the camera sort of following her, just like Myers does. And then she just sort of sits on this little thing and waits for Annie to pick her up. And the wind is kind of blowing, and it's just, I don't know. Again, like, this scene of Laurie, like, enjoying watching the children trick-or-treating, right? Like, she likes Halloween at this point, right? She enjoys the fun of it, right? She enjoys all of the stuff that goes along with Halloween. And that will never be true again, ever, right, with her. So... And then Annie arrives and Laurie scuttles over to her car. And Annie brings some pot so they can get high on their way over. Meanwhile, Loomis is on his way to the graveyard. I love this graveyard caretaker guy. Judith Myers, let's see here. Row 18, plot 20. Oh, Charlie Bowles over in Russellville. I love Loomis. He's just like annoyed and pissed off at this guy. He doesn't care. He's like, stop talking. Just take me to the grave of Judith Myers. He interrupts him and he's like, what are we doing? It's so funny. Loomis is great. So here we get some more backstory, some more exposition about Judith Myers. And we discovered that the tombstone is gone, and the caretaker thinks it's the kids that doing pranks for Halloween. But Loomis looks at it and kind of realizes that it's certainly not the kids. He knows what's going on here. So he came home, says Loomis. He came home. And then we come back to Laurie and Annie, and they're smoking pot, driving around, having a good old time. Halloween night, getting high. They're listening to, Don't Fear the Reaper. And then the shape begins following them. Again, the music and like the teacher talking about fate, right? Don't fear the Reaper and destiny and fate and all that. It's all just sort of subtly layered in. It's just every little thing in this movie is just really important and brilliant. And, you think it's just a silly horror movie, but there's a lot of depth to it. I think that's what resonated with audiences. That's what made it special, is that it was more than just a slasher flick, right? It was more than just, zombies or murderers or whatever. There was something else about this movie. Another alarm. Interestingly enough, another alarm. And there's also a train station crossing, right? A train crossing right here. So we have another train crossing. And then we find out that the hardware store gets broken into, and the sheriff thinks it was kids. Kids get, yeah, and he even says it, you blame everything on the kids, right? So all of Michael Myers' accoutrements for murder, the knives, the rope, the mask, he stole it all from the hardware store. You probably know this story, but the mask, the Michael Myers mask is a William Shatner mask, spray painted white, and kind of mess with a little bit. But I'm sure everyone knows that tale. But yeah, and off they go. And as they pull out, Loomis shows up and confronts the sheriff. Loomis is like adamant that he needs to speak to the sheriff. Sheriff tells him to wait for 10 minutes. Meanwhile, Michael Myers brilliantly just like drives right behind him. Loomis continues to kind of miss him, and you can't see him. He's just right there. This is great, right? He's like, so it's like dusk now, and they're talking about being worried that her dad smelled the pot, and then it goes from like talking about the dance and stuff, and then it goes from like sundown to like the pitch black midnight in like 2 feet. So. And they're still driving. I don't know. It's funny. And they're talking about Laurie trying to ask Ben Tramer to the dance. And Laurie doesn't have a lot of confidence to do that kind of stuff. Yeah, but she will find some confidence later tonight. But I love that the movie, like, we're 37 minutes into the film right now, and, it's not nighttime yet. Like, nothing's happened except for setup, right? And, like, character development. I love it. It's slow. It's thoughtful. It's methodical. It takes its time. The pacing is brilliant. Like, you don't need to rush into it. Spend 37 minutes to establish your characters. Spend 37 minutes to frame the terror, right? I just love it. I love it. And then we arrive at the scene of the mayhem, and now it is nighttime on Halloween, and all hell it will soon break loose. And so we're again getting the Michael Myers perspective. We hear the breathing. He's in the car. He's followed Laurie and Annie to the houses, and he's kind of just getting a sense of the area and kind of scoping out, where they're going to be. And I love, again, the lighting here and the silence, the quiet, and all we hear is the breathing, right? It's just like, and then he just kind of casually steps out of the car, walks across the street. Kids are Halloweening. Hear the crickets, the stillness of the evening. Like, I don't know. There's a mood, there's a tone to this film, and like, he's just out in the open. Like Michael Myers is an interesting kind of villain because he's unconcerned with the world around him for the most part. He just doesn't care. He just goes where he wants and does what he wants and, whatever. And it's really an interesting kind of play on it. And so Loomis and the sheriff, meanwhile, approach the Myers home to sort of follow up on Loomis's suspicions, that Michael Myers has returned home to his childhood home in Haddonfield, Illinois. And as I said earlier, the house is very much a part of the show. The house is a character, It's interesting, rewatching this now and kind of, knowing what I know about David Lynch and Twin Peaks, another one of my favorite things, this theme of trauma in the American household, right, is present here. The Myers house actually looks very, very similar to the Palmer house. And there's lots of these moments of like up the stairs, right? Like walking up the stairs is menacing somehow, you know, like this movement from first floor to upper floor. There's a menacing quality to that somehow. And I think that's really interesting, right? And so here we have the sheriff and we have Loomis kind of skulking through the house. It's darkly lit. It's nighttime. They've got flashlights. They're just kind of investigating quietly. And Loomis looks concerned and angry and annoyed the whole time, like always. And we see again the room we saw at the beginning. And Loomis begins explaining the sort of Michael Myers backstory and how Mike Myers murdered his sister. And Loomis, and there's kind of a jump scare right here. A gutter kind of falls down, cracks the window. Loomis pulls out his gun. Loomis is such an interesting character. Like the way Pleasance plays it is so fascinating. This little monologue about Michael Myers, pure evil. Right? This is like this theme of pure evil is present throughout, right? Like he's not a human, he's not a person, he's just evil embodied, you know? Like that's an interesting theme. You know, often horror films really go into like the backstory of the villain and what makes the villain kill and what has happened to this person to drive them to this and why do they do it. None of that here, right? It's just evil. You know, it's just evil incarnate. It's just simple. I think that's another interesting thing with this film, the simplicity, right? Everything's just kind of pure and simple. So Loomis kind of discourages the police officer from, putting out an APB on this guy, and they're kind of just doing their own thing, and he kind of lets Loomis do his own thing, and Loomis just kind of hangs out in the house for a little while, and then we cut back to the babysitting adventures. And Laurie is reading King Arthur to Billy Loomis, and he loves comic books, though. Laser Man. Neutron Man. Tarantula Man. That sounds cool. The Boogeyman. So the first mention of the Boogeyman, right, which is another kind of moniker for Michael Myers, right? He goes by, originally in the original script, he was called The Shape, and they call him Michael Myers often, and that's his name, but they often also refer to him as the Boogeyman. So Annie checks in, and we kind of get this gossipy phone call conversation where Annie reveals that she's told Ben Tramer that Laurie likes him, and they're typical kind of like high school kid talk. Meanwhile, and then Michael Myers is stalking outside of the house. And of course, Annie's demise is coming soon here, sadly. And the kid that she's babysitting, Lindsay, is watching a scary movie on the sofa by herself. Annie's not a very good babysitter, right? We see Laurie like reading and engaging and taking care of the kids and stuff. But Annie's just like more interested in, hooking up with her boyfriend and chatting with Laurie. And yeah. And we're about to get sort of like a horror movie trope here in a second, where like the damsel in distress kind of spills food or something and has to like take her clothes off to, just become more vulnerable, right? I think a lot of, and rightly so, there's a lot of criticism about the horror genre and the way it portrays women and women's bodies and things like that, and that's a right criticism to have, right? Oh, this is one of my favorite shots of the whole movie, when Billy Loomis looks out the window and Michael Myers is silhouetted against the light of the house across the street, and he just sees him there, and the kids run across. It's just like the mood there. The mood is just perfect. Like it's like a painting. It's like a work of art. Like that shot across the street is absolutely incredible. Like it's incredible. And then Laurie looks out the window and that he's gone. There's the flickering pumpkin, the wind in the trees. I think it's the wind in the trees that really gets me on this. Another David Lynch kind of connection there. I should write an essay about Halloween, John Carpenter and David Lynch. Anyway, so yeah, the whole like women being naked and stuff in horror films. Yes, there's an objectification to that for sure. But I think it's also just like a human kind of thing to be vulnerable when you're naked, right? Like being naked, being declothed, like there's a vulnerability there for any gender, right? I think. And so it kind of creates this sense of vulnerability, this sort of feeling of like, you're kind of stripped down, right? So, and then he kind of bumps into this potted plant. It falls and breaks, and Annie kind of hears it, and she's like, "Oh," just sort of dismisses it as nothing. Like she's just so very dismissive. Not interested in any of that nonsense. Oh, and then yeah, the dog finds the boogeyman. And he's just, Lindsay, take care of the dog. But Myers took care of him already, I'm afraid. Yikes. Oh, poor dog. Poor dog. It's not cool, dude. I love this. We get this shot of the old television playing an old horror movie, and it's The Thing, right? Winchester Pictures Corporation with two rifles crossing. Oh my God. Howard Hawks' production of The Thing, which is another classic horror movie, like a really, really, really good classic horror film. Laurie and Billy are just kind of mesmerized on the sofa. Laurie's kind of twirling her hair. No such thing as the boogeyman, says Laurie. And she goes into this little discussion of the boogeyman, and Halloween is all make-believe, and Billy's he's just as concerned as Dr. Loomis. He's like, no, it's real. And again, I love sort of the build-up in this film, right? Like, there's this sort of like, there's like the calm before the storm in this film, right? It reminds me a lot of what they were doing, like with what Ridley Scott was doing in Alien as well, in the original Alien film, right? There's this sort of creeping dread, and there's a lot of calm moments of sort of peace and like not really believing that this threat is real, or not wanting to believe that the threat is real. And taking your time with those scenes is what really builds it up, right? So you've got this just pure evil force kind of operating behind the scenes here, and the characters are very unaware of it, and it creates that sort of tension and suspense throughout that really makes it work at the end, because we get all these quiet moments of sort of safety. And we think that we're safe, but we're not, because he's always there, right? He's always there. And I think that's a bigger kind of meta theme too, right? This idea that like evil is always there. Threat is always there, right? Danger is just lurking around the corner. I mean, that's something that we don't maybe want to believe in all the time, but is kind of true in a lot of ways. And I think, sometimes we just have to ignore that and kind of go on. But in this, it's very real. And so here we have Annie kind of cleaning her clothes, doing the wash. The door closes to the laundry room. Makes no sense why the laundry room door would lock from the inside. But, is what it is, I guess. So she's trapped in the laundry room. And meanwhile, Michael Myers is somewhere. Lindsay's glued to the TV in the dark, watching the same movie that Billy's watching across the street. Phone rings, but Lindsay's she's unconcerned about the phone. And then we get this great shot of the exterior of Annie in the laundry room, and we see through the back door of the laundry room, and Michael Myers is now in the window of the back door of the laundry room, kind of stalking Annie here, and it's just this really creepy, unsettling shot, and the music kind of comes up, and then Annie tries to escape out the back window here, and she kind of gets stuck in this sort of compromised position. All right, so we hear from Paul now for the first time, and so Paul asks Lindsay to go get Annie, and there's a really screwed up line later, which I don't think they meant to have in the movie, but it is what it is. But so Annie runs out to find Lindsay, and again, like, there's all these moments where, like, oh, is this the moment where Myers attacks? Is this the moment where he attacks? Oh, is he going to attack here when the kid comes out? Like, there's all these, like, moments of, like, oh, my God. Like, when he's there, we know he's there. We know he's waiting. Like, what's he waiting for? When's he going to strike? And he still hasn't yet. And so here's Annie somehow stuck in the window with her butt up in the air. So, yeah, there's not a lot of, like, all my little commentary about naked vulnerability, but that's probably more of just like an objectification moment. All right, so somehow Annie has survived the laundry room, and they make their way back to the house. She's got these knee-high yellow socks on, and the phone rings, and we see the Jolly Time popcorn, all the old stuff from the 70s. And he's like, don't tell anyone. Immediately Lindsay tells someone. Ironic, because the first thing Paul says to Annie is, stuck, huh? And later Paul will be stuck with a knife up on this closet that's right behind Annie right now. And then Michael Myers, there he is again in the window, and then he's gone, and he's always there, and he's gone, he's there, and he's gone, he's always popping in and stuff. And so they're kind of talking and chatting and flirting a little bit. And then we hear the audio from the TV. Lock your doors, bolt your windows. And Lindsay's scared. Oh. Annie's just such a bad babysitter. She just dumps him off with. Oh, did I say? I've been saying Billy Doyle. I've been using the kid Billy. What have I been saying? Billy Loomis? That's not right. Gosh, sorry, folks. Oh, I'm getting old. Billy, the kid that Laurie is watching is named Tommy Doyle, not Billy Loomis. I don't know why. Dr. Loomis. The Loomis is the doctor. I was like, why am I saying Billy Loomis this whole podcast? That's ridiculous. Apologies. This whole sequence, there's a lot of like Michael Myers like popping up and just kind of breathing and watching. I just think it's good. I think it's good. Like, we never quite know when he's going to strike. And I think that creates a real sort of tension. We're making a jack-o'-lantern. Tommy Doyle's making a jack-o'-lantern. Well, Laurie's making the jack-o'-lantern. Which is a very accurate portrayal. Having a child myself, that's, they help as much as they can, but it usually ends up the adult just scooping out the pumpkin alive. And they're talking about Ben Tramer, and Laurie is like, don't set me up with Ben Tramer. Like, just kind of like character development, very human. And she kind of manipulates Laurie here to take the kid, like. Bye. And once more, Laurie kind of makes a little commentary to herself. The old Girl Scout comes through once again. These little Laurie Strode talking to herself moments are interesting, I think, how she perceives herself. All right, and now, so Annie heads back to get in the car, and now, she realizes that the car is locked. She's going to pick up her boyfriend, Paul. Car's locked, and, oh wait, is it Paul that gets stuck up on the thing later? It might not be. That's the other one's boyfriend. Anyway, I'm messing up all kinds of stuff. I love that exterior shot of the house and the wind blowing in the trees. And it's weird because you can kind of tell it's lit weirdly too, in a way, because the light is coming up from the bottom. It's kind of illuminating the underside of the tree, but it looks good. It looks right. I don't know. There's they nailed it. So she heads in the house, finds the car keys in the living room, in her purse or whatever. And she's kind of oblivious. She's kind of humming and singing a little bit and just kind of, not really thinking about anything. And she's kind of fixing her hair, getting ready to go hang out with her boyfriend. And then she comes back to the car. Car's unlocked. So that's interesting. How did Myers get the keys? How did he get in there? It's all fogged up. She's like, what's going on here? I love the little sound of the burp on the... Oh, and then there he is in the back seat. The thing about this film, too, is that it's very not gory, right? There's very little blood in this film. A lot of people get killed by this killer, but there's very little blood. And, this it's just kind of the mask is just so good. It's just such a sort of blank face of just unfeeling evil, right? To just be able to he doesn't distinguish between what he did to the dog and what he's doing here right now, and that's just part of who he is. And then Annie kind of dies in this very hyperbolic sort of overly dramatic way. Kind of her face kind of slides down the glass. The kids are watching the horror movies on TV, so that's interesting too, right? Fictional horror is happening on the television that the kids are watching, and then real horror is happening outside, but then we're also watching horror on TV, and real horror is happening outside too, that we're choosing not to pay attention to. So I don't know. That's kind of an interesting thought as well. Again, a connection to Twin Peaks there too, TV within TV, right? Maybe this film is sort of a commentary on horror films in a way, right? Maybe, perhaps, I don't know. And so here goes Tommy Doyle, trying to see, I hate this too, because he was scared and bullied by the bullies earlier, and now he's doing the same thing to Lindsay, and it's just perpetual cycles. Turns around, looks out the window. Oh my God. And the shot again of the exterior of the house. This time we see Michael Myers carrying Annie's body, and Billy Doyle witnesses this, and he's just like, what the hell is that? I love those far away shots. And then he bumps into Lindsay, they scream, they both scare each other. Laurie runs to the rescue. They're all freaked out by the boogeyman. The boogeyman's outside. It's Halloween. Laurie gets angry, you're scaring everybody. There's no such thing as the boogeyman. They show the shot of the exterior again. So good. It's so good. Nobody believes you. I believe you, Tommy. So Lindsay believes Tommy. And that actually comes back, later in the most recent iterations of these films, which we'll get to down the road, their relationship. And they continue watching the horror films and the scary movies and enjoying Halloween, at least for the time being. And so this is one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie here. We basically have Loomis, who's kind of been hanging out in the bushes outside the Myers house, and a couple of kids, Lonnie, the kids that we've been hearing about from what's his name? I always forget his name. These kids come up to the Myers house to kind of, do something scary on Halloween night. And Loomis he's in the bushes and he's like, get your ass away from there. And this little look that Pleasant, he has this look of bemused satisfaction on his face. he's so happy with himself that he kind of like scared the shit out of these kids. Like Loomis is just a really interesting character. He has this like shit-faced grin and then the sheriff kind of startles him. And, the sheriff keeps saying like, you're wrong. Nothing's going on. It's a quiet, peaceful Halloween night. And Loomis is like, no, you're wrong. You're wrong. So it's amazing that the sheriff like listens. At this point, his daughter is dead, right? He doesn't even realize he's sitting here saying how everything's fine. His own daughter has been murdered by this, And I love this description of Myers, like just staring into the future for, years. Death has come to your little town, Sheriff. So, more fancy talk, Dr. Loomis. Yeah, so this is very much... This kind of reminds me of Jaws, right? Like the idea that like the local authorities are trying to protect the town, trying to protect the image of the town. You have someone warning them that this danger is coming and they don't want to listen to him. Loomis, he's like, damn you for letting him go. I didn't let him go. He escaped, bro. What do you want me to do? And then Loomis just continues to stare at the house. He's just like in the dark bushes, just like in a trench coat. Okay, so now we get more stuff with the teenagers and kind of what they're up to this Halloween night. And you can kind of tell now, like, we're later in the evening, right? Like, the Halloweening has kind of died down. There's not really trick-or-treating happening anymore. It's kind of later at night now. This is really fucked up. So, like, they're drunk in the car, and the boyfriend says, first I'll rip your clothes off, then I'll rip my clothes off. Then he says he'll rip Lindsay's clothes off. That's like the 6-year-old girl that she's supposed to be baby. What the shit kind of line is that? That line is messed up. Like, I feel like that actor maybe just, like, said the wrong name, and no one was just like, oh, screw it, no one will know the people's... Like, I think he meant to say Annie, right? Like, he meant to say Annie. Right? Like, but he said Lindsay, which is the little kid. Like, that's really messed up. So these two idiots are just kind of like, banging around in the house. And it's your typical, like, we're going to have sex and then get murdered, a horror film trope kind of thing. But they kind of, they do it in a little bit of a different way. So the whole sex and violence sort of concoction in horror films is another interesting discussion that can certainly be had, and sort of the connection between those things, and why that is, and why a lot of horror films kind of have this sort of like this. It's like the death drive idea, right? Like these two sort of forces that are at odds with one another, right? The force of the death and the life force, right? Like procreation, sex, this is like a force of life, and then you have this force of death that is like also in it. So it's like this tension there between those two kind of human, base human kind of characteristics. I think that's why we get so much of that in horror films. And then we cut back, and of course Michael Myers is in the house staring at the two teenagers making out on the sofa, and we hear the music. Cut back to Laurie and the kids, and they've carved the jack-o'-lantern and they're having fun, woo, as they walk into the family room. And Laurie kind of glances over across the street at where Annie's supposed to be and notices the house has kind of gone dark. And she also notices that that her friend's car has pulled up. She assumes they're kind of making out or whatever. She's like, everybody's having a good time tonight. So again, we're still an hour. We're almost at the end of the film, right? We're about an hour and 3 minutes into the movie, and still Laurie is in this mode of like, everything's fine, right? I'm safe. The kids are safe. It's just another normal Halloween. Nothing bad is happening. So I just, that's very unusual, right? For like a horror film to kind of play it so slow, right? And to wait so long until the sort of the protagonist kind of is in peril. All right, here's kind of the first moment, right? Because Laurie just talked to Annie, and Annie went to pick up Paul, and that was the last time Laurie saw her, and she's dead now, and Laurie's kind of like, I wonder what happened to Annie. That's kind of weird, but she kind of dismisses it, right? There's like, Lindsay's gone for the night. That's wonderful. That's so stupid. And again, these sort of quiet still shots outside these houses. Like, I just love those little moments. Like, they didn't need to put those in there, but like, it just creates the mood. Like the crickets, the wind in the trees, the darkness, like the town, right? Like it's a character in the movie. That's what's so key about it. So okay. So here there's the teenagers having sex in the bedroom, and there's a lit jack-o'-lantern on the damn nightstand. Who the hell puts a lit jack-o'-lantern on their bedroom nightstand? It leaves it there. I just thought that was crazy. And so they're just, the guy's getting all annoyed. I don't even remember his name. Is it Paul or Steve? It's Mike or something. Who knows? It's probably not Mike. So they take the phone off the hook because they're interrupted by it, and continue with their intimate act. And we kind of linger here for a moment. And then we see Michael Myers' shadow across the wall. So he's, again, this sort of threatening presence is around, and they're unaware of it. We hear the breathing for a moment in the mask. And then they're done. That lasted all of about 10 seconds. So, yeah. Typical kind of horror movie stuff. Puts his glasses on. She starts smoking a cigarette. Lights up two, one for each. And they had this clever little dialogue of his saying yeah to each other, and then he does it. He breaks, he breaks the cardinal rule. I'll be right back, right? You can't say it, right? We all remember Scream, right? So he leaves and leaves. I keep forgetting her name, but I forget. Leaves her up there, and she's just kind of relaxing by the light of the jack-o'-lantern. There's a gigantic painting of a kitten in the hallway outside the kitchen of this house. It's ridiculous. So he opens the fridge and he's looking for some beers. And he's about to come face to face with something spooky. I love the lighting. It's like it's darker than most films would allow themselves to be these days. Like the light just feels right. It's you can't see anything. You can barely see the shot. You can barely see the moonlight hitting the door frame and the windowsill. Everything else is just completely dark. And most movies wouldn't go that far. And I think it's so crucial that this movie just makes things be dark. It's okay. Like, you don't have to see everything. So the back doors is kind of slightly open, and he's kind of like poking around, thinking someone's trying to scare him. We hear the breathing. And then Michael Myers strikes. And this guy struggles for a minute. We kind of get this really intense kind of scene of like demonstrating exactly what we're dealing with here. Like, Michael Myers seems to be superhumanly strong. He lifts the knife, which is the moonlight glints off of the knife. Again, another brilliant lighting moment, and right through the heart. And he pins the guy up on the wall 3 feet off the ground, and he kind of hangs there for a moment, and his feet kind of relax. And this is a great moment too. Like, Myers just he's kind of curiously nodding his head back and forth, looking at what he's just done. And it just creates some mystery, right? Like, we don't know what this guy's motives really are. Loomis is telling us that he's just pure evil. He seems somehow curious, or certainly ambivalent about murdering folks. But then he also has this idea to like put on a ghost sheet, right? Like, so he's not just a robot murderer, right? So he comes up. This is just a creepy moment, right? He's still standing in the door frame. He's got this bed sheet on. He's wearing the guy's glasses, so the woman doesn't realize who it actually is in there. And we hear the breathing, so we know it's Myers, but she doesn't know. And so it creates this really fun tension of like, and she's trying to kind of entice him back into bed, and he's just kind of standing there, kind of just not moving, and she starts to get annoyed. It's kind of Bob. His name's Bob. Now she's like, "Where's the beers?" And we hear just the breathing, right? And like, this is a great scene because the audience knows what's about to happen, but she doesn't know, right? And so we're sitting here. It's one of those moments like, run away, like, don't go up the stairs, right? But the audience knows. So as soon as she starts picking up the phone, Myers walks in. Again, he doesn't move quickly. He doesn't rush. He just uses the same speed that he uses always. And we get that hammering music. Dang, 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 dang. So, and then he strangles her with the telephone cord, right? And we sort of, and she's kind of naked during this scene, right? So again, it's that thing I was talking about earlier about like vulnerability, right? So she thinks it's kind of like a crank call, and Laurie thinks it's a crank call. And then as she kind of dies and kind of falls to the ground, she kind of pulls the sheet off of Michael Myers. And oh, that's Annie. Well, what's the other woman's name then? Oh, anyway, I'm getting the names all confused. So this is the moment where Michael Myers hears Laurie's voice. And I think that kind of, and then she looks over and she sees the lights come on and flicker for a moment, I guess, on and off. She starts to get a little concerned now. She's kind of like, what's happening here? Like she's getting a sense, right? Like something's not right. She calls across the street while she's looking out the window to just see if the lights come on or if anyone answers, and no one answers. So another shot of like going up the stairs. Really, I can't stop thinking how similar this house is to Laura Palmer's house in Twin Peaks. Like the floor plan is just very, very similar. And that's just really interesting to me. So she checks on the kids, makes sure they're okay and asleep. And then she decides that she's going to go over and investigate what's happening across the street. Meanwhile, at the Myers house, good old Dr. Loomis is just still hanging out in the bushes, I guess. This scene is absolutely asinine too in a lot of ways, but he's been standing at this house for 3 hours in the bushes in the dark, just standing around, and then he just now glances down the street and he notices the car from the psychiatric hospital. Just now notices it. Like, what? Come on, Dr. Loomis. So and the theme music comes up, and here's Loomis now running through the streets, which apparently the Myers house is only right down the street from where all this nonsense is kind of happening. So he sees the car and he kind of realizes that like what he said is accurate. Myers is here and he's out and about killing people, and something needs to be done. I kind of like, too, the way this is cut together and edited. Like, we've got these two kind of dovetailing stories, Loomis and Laurie, right? And Laurie's kind of heading to where the danger is, and Loomis is also heading to where the danger is, and they're kind of operating in that way, and they're going to come together here soon and kind of meet up at the very end. So Laurie grabs her keys, and again, the pacing is just great. Like, it's slow paced. Like there's nothing. We're an hour and 13 minutes into this movie, and it's still just really taking its time. Like she doesn't rush over. She steps out onto the porch for a moment. She kind of gazes across the street at the house, kind of thinks about it for a second. Like, is everything all right over there? She kind of puts her hands in her pockets and just kind of slowly kind of makes her way across the street as the camera like flips back and forth between her and the house and her and the house. It's just, the darkness is very oppressive in this scene. Like everything's very dark as she crosses the street. The house is dark. There's no lights on at all. We hear like a crow call. This sort of piano music is kind of playing, and she's just walking across the street. Like this is a good 2 or 3 minutes of her just kind of slowly walking across the street. And again, I love the camera work in this movie. The camera just sort of just kind of moves in front of her. And I think it's really, really paced well. It builds the tension. And it's so simple, but it just builds the tension. We hear a dog bark in the distance. The wind is kind of tossing her hair as she kind of makes her way to the front of the house. Jack-o'-lantern almost burned down to nothing now on the front porch. Rings the doorbell. She calls out to Bob and Linda to see if they're there, bangs on the door knocker, like she's just trying to get a sense of kind of what's going on. Where is everybody? That little pumpkin right there is it's such a good touch. And so she kind of, Linda and Annie, that's their name. Linda and Annie, and Bob and Paul. So she goes around the back of the house and kind of, makes her way into the dark. And she notices the back door is open. And, but the body of Bob is no longer there, pinned up against the wooden door, right? That the body has been moved. So Laurie, again, slowly makes her way into the house. we get a lovely little door creak sound, like a classic little like creaking door. She goes into the pantry, but she stops. She hears kind of like a shuffling sound. And again, it's just this buildup, right? We're like 10 minutes away we're like 15 minutes away from the end of this movie. And like, you just feel it. Like you feel it cresting like a wave. Like the shit is about to hit the fan, like it's been building up to this moment this whole time. She's kind of been making her way over to this scene of danger this whole time. And we know what's about to happen. And again, the scene where she's in the front room and like, you can't even see anything. It's just this one shaft of moonlight. It's just brilliant. Like it's just dark and it's great. And all this darkness sets up a really important scene that's coming up soon. So like, we get used to things being in the dark, and there's a reason for that, because there's a really key moment coming up that requires the shadows to be the way they are. So we'll see that here soon. So Laurie's kind of shouting through the house, like calling out to her friends, getting kind of frustrated now. She's like had enough of their jokes and their scares and stuff. Like she's kind of over it. And she kind of slowly makes her way up the stairs. The camera kind of follows in front of her. So everything's darkly lit. It's all just shadows and moonlight. That sort of menacing piano music follows her up the stairs. And when she gets to the top, everything's quiet, dark and quiet, and she doesn't know what's going on. And it's just slow. It's just one step at a time. Slow, slow, slow. Don't rush it, right? Like do not. And then, so there's a door that's slightly ajar, and she sees sort of this orange light kind of pouring out of the door. It's making this really neat little like line across the floor. And so she goes that way to investigate. And then when she opens the door is kind of when everything starts to unravel. I like how we're in the room when she comes in. We see her entry, and we kind of see her reaction to what she's looking at. We don't see yet what she sees, but it is terrible. And then we realize it is the body of her friend, Linda, on the bed, the tombstone of Judith Myers above her, the gleaming jack-o'-lantern on the nightstand next to her. Laurie, in terror, backs up into the wall, not understanding what she's even seeing right now. And Jamie Lee Curtis just destroys. And then another body flops down from the ceiling. And then she kind of scaredly, she kind of backs into another corner of the room. And then another dead body is in a cabinet. And so like, it's all of her friends, right? Her entire circle of friends murdered dead in this one room. And she's just like lost her mind. Jamie Lee Curtis plays this so well. She's just terrified. She's like, oh my God, what has happened here? She kind of slumps down into a dark corner of the upper hallway. And this is one of the greatest moments ever, when we just see Michael Myers' white mask kind of in the shadow of the room there. And he goes for her with the knife and misses. He somehow misses, cuts her shirt, cuts her arm, and she falls off the banister down the stairs. That's a pretty tough fall, and hurts herself. And then Myers kind of appears at the top of the stairs, and now Laurie runs away. And Myers gives chase. The stalker, the shape, coming after her. And she just runs. She tries to get away, and he's just slowly kind of pursuing her, you know, and so somehow I guess the door got locked behind her. I guess Myers did that while she was making her way through the house. A little unsure about that one, but there's kind of a rake there now that we get like a Stanley Kubrick Shining moment too here a little bit, where Michael Myers punches through the door and unlocks it with his hand. He just forces his way, punches through a wooden door to unlock it. And him standing there in the kitchen is just so terrifying. You know, you see him coming. He's got the knife. He switches the knife to his other hand as he walks towards her. She manages to get out, and she runs out into the night, out into the street, screaming, help me, screaming it. Like, real terror, real horror. But it's Halloween night, right? And people don't really listen to that on Halloween night, right? She runs immediately over to the next door neighbor's house, and she bangs on the door. Please, someone help me, someone help me. The lights come on for a moment. They peek out their front window. They see her, and they just, in a moment of like pure human cynicism, they turn the lights off and don't want to help her. She realizes that she's on her own. So she runs back to the house that she was babysitting at. No idea where Myers is at this point. That hammer driving music is just banging in the background. The camera is moving so much faster now, right? I think that's the other point of the slowness of the film up to this moment is like, oh, and this shot of Michael Myers, this wide shot, this far away shot of him across the street, coming out of the shadows towards her is just amazing. And she can't get in the house. Tommy's asleep. Tommy Doyle. He won't open the door, but she wakes him up by throwing a potted plant up there. And here comes the shape, right? And he's just getting closer and closer. The wind blowing, the leaves around is amazing. Let me in, Tommy. Let me in. Like, and she's just like terrified, right? Get upstairs, lock the doors. The boogeyman's coming. Phone line's been cut somehow. Doesn't work. Not sure when that happened or who did that. But she realizes that the window is open, and we see the breeze blowing in, and we hear the breathing. And I love this scene. That the room is so dark. Again, everything is just pitch dark except for this one shaft of moonlight. And her hand is kind of bleeding. She grabs her knitting needle, and and then Michael Myers above the couch misses again. And then Laurie gets him in the neck with her knitting needle. And he kind of just drops. And she's like, it's over. She doesn't know the rules yet, right? She doesn't know that these evil forces just can't die, and they just keep coming back, right? So now she's got the knife. And there's Myers' body on the floor. You can barely see it in the moonlight, but you can see kind of the bloody, sewing needle. And knitting needle, I should say, I guess. And she kind of relaxes for a moment on the sofa, just disgustedly throws the knife to the ground. And she just kind of stops there for a minute. And then here comes Loomis. He's just like walking down the street, as casual as can be. And then the sheriff shows up behind him in his car. And he tells the sheriff what's going on. He tells him, to go watch the backs of the houses. Loomis has his gun ready to go. He's got his hand in his pocket. He's just wandering around trying to see what he can see, Again, Loomis is just kind of like a little bit of toilet paper and a bush back there. It's a nice touch, some Halloween stuff going on. And then Laurie makes her way up the steps, to check on the kids, make sure they're okay and that they're safe. And she kind of hugs them and embraces them. tells them they're going to leave. They go back to this boogeyman discussion, and then Laurie says she killed him. And Tommy says, you can't kill the boogeyman. And then there he is right behind her, right? You can't kill the boogeyman, Laurie. Like, the kid knows the rules, right? The kid gets the rules of the horror movie. So she runs in the bedroom, hides the kids, opens the door to make it look like she went out there, and then hides in the closet. And sort of like wraps something around the door so that he can't get in, I guess. And the music is so good. It's just that hammering synth wavy sound. Dang, 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 dang. It's just so tension inducing. Again, the lighting, I keep coming back to the lighting. It's just so good. It's all shadows, right? She's just in the dark closet, hiding in the corner, and she just sees his shadow kind of move through the room, and he begins pressing on the door, and he's trying to get in, and he's like, I'm going to get you. And it's that classic moment of like, I'm going to get you. And she's kind of whimpering in the closet, kind of hiding. And although she retreats a lot, she retreats and hides and kind of does that a lot in this film. But like at the same time, she's very much got agency and sort of, takes matters into her own hands and fights back, right? She doesn't just give up. So Myers' hand busts in. He kind of turns the light on accidentally. And again, the swinging light, just the way that swinging light kind of creates these cool shadows in this scene is brilliant. Again, awesome. And we just see him kind of trying to get in, and we hear the breathing. He's so menacing. He's so like kind of just forceful. And Laurie, all she can do is grab a hanger, and she jabs it into his eyeball, and it stuns him for a moment enough to drop the knife. And then she grabs the knife, and she sticks him with it right in the gut. And then right when that happens, the music stops. All right, so sewing needle to the neck, hanger to the eye, knife thrust to the chest, right? He's got to be done at this point, right? She's like, for sure done. So she kind of slowly makes her way out of the closet. He's just lying there as though dead, right? He's just motionless. And she sort of opens the closet door, kind of looks at him for a second. She has the knife. She's just kind of moving really slowly. No music in this scene, which is, I think, really key. It's very quiet. She drops the knife again. She's like, okay, I got him this time. She leaves him there. She goes to where the kids are, I think. Yeah. And she tells the kids to get out of there, here. And she tells the kids what to do. She says, get out of here, go down the street, tell the Mackenzies to call the police. So she saves the kids. She gets the kids out of there, even though, yeah. And then this is just the classic scene. She's relieved. It's over. She's up against the wall. She's beaten up. She's like tired. And Myers just rises up with this super creepy, just like lifts up, turns his head, and then music starts up again. As the kids run screaming out of the house, Loomis is there and he sees them. And he's like, okay, yeah, this is it. They leave the front door open, and he's like, he doesn't do anything to the kids, by the way. He just like these two children go screaming into the night out of this house, and he just lets them go. Loomis is so interesting. So then here's Laurie. She thinks it's over. In the background, we see the boogeyman, Michael Myers, coming at her again, stalking her, getting closer. It's so good. The music is just really going at this point. She kind of steps out into the hallway, not knowing he's there, and he attacks her and starts strangling her in the hallway. And she puts up a fight, and then Loomis arrives, sees what's going on here. She takes his mask off for a moment. We actually see his face here, and it's just kind of like a normal kind of face with an eye injury. And then Loomis shoots him. We hear a gunshot ring out. Michael Myers kind of falls back into the bedroom. He's standing there against the light. And Loomis fires a gun at him about 4 more times, and he falls off of the balcony. And we see this great shot of him lying dead on the front lawn. or so we think. Laurie is completely traumatized at this point, doesn't know what to do. Just beside herself. She looks at Loomis. She says it was the boogeyman. And he replies, as a matter of fact, it was. It's just a good interchange between those two, you know, like, not like, who are you? Are you okay? She's just like, it was the boogeyman. And he was like, yeah. And then the greatest ever, he looks over the balcony, the music starts, and Myers is gone. And Loomis, he kind of knows that he's gone. He kind of knows that's not going to be enough. And Laurie just starts to cry, just totally traumatized by these events, just doesn't even know how to react or how to respond or how she even managed to survive. Loomis kind of gazes up at the moonlight, looks around for a moment. And then my favorite part of the film is these last moments where we just get we hear the breathing of Michael Myers, and the camera shows us all of these scenes of violence just sort of frozen in time. The stairs, the front bedroom, the downstairs room, like the outside of the house with the wind and the dark. And we just hear the breathing in and out, as if Myers is everywhere. We see all the different houses. We see the front of the Myers house as the sort of closing shot, the wind and the trees and the breathing, and then the title card, Halloween. That ending is amazing. Like, the decision to just show those sort of exterior shots and hear Michael Myers breathing is just such a brilliant move, because it just reminds us that, like, it's not really, yes, this man, this evil, this force, this killer came in and murdered these people. But what those last shots remind us of is that it's not like a man who is really the problem. It's like the evil in the world, right? It's all around us. It's pervasive. It's everywhere. It's just in the wind, right? Like, he's all around us. And, you know, like that fear, right? The fear after these events, the fear that will linger in Haddonfield, Illinois, and for these people, the trauma that will stay with them for the rest of their lives is pervasive. It's everywhere. And I think that's the sort of, you know, this movie might seem like a simple film at first glance, but I think there's a lot more going on here than just like the babysitter murders or whatever, like as they called it when it first came out. Like, there is a commentary here about, you know, fear and about what that does to people and what it does to a society and to a community. So, all right. Well, that was Halloween 1. We have 12 more to go. It's going to be a really fun ride. Thank you for hanging out with me for the first film. I hope you enjoyed watching it again with me. We'll be releasing Halloween 2 soon, and we'll continue with the story of Laurie Strode and Michael Myers. So thanks for tuning in for this one, everybody, and I will catch you on the next episode. Bye for now.